Okay, now what are process diagrams? Typically, this question, a process diagram, is not a very common question in the IELTS task 1. Okay, more common are graphs. Okay, maybe a bar graph, a line graph, or a pie chart. These are more commonly asked questions, but that doesn't mean that you cannot get a process diagram. Okay, so it is important that you all be well acquainted with how you should write a report on a process diagram, because it's not that it cannot come. It's just that it is not as frequently asked a question as the data related question. Okay. Now you could have different types of processes. Okay. It could be a man-made process. So a man-made process is typically related to manufacturing. Okay. So there is this diagram over here, which is a process of brick manufacturing. So this entire process tell you how bricks are manufactured. So it could be anything. It could be olive oil or orange juice, the or it could be cheese. So any such product, the manufacturing process, it is a man-made process. Okay, it's not a natural process. So that's why it's referred to as a man-made process. So this is one type of question that you could be asked in a process diagram. Now, what else? You could also have natural processes. So what are natural processes? These are processes which actually happen in nature. Okay, like for example, there is a water cycle. Okay, this is something which all of us have actually learned in school. I'm sure you all would remember that this is something we covered when we were in school. So this is a natural process because it occurs in nature. Okay, it's not artificially created. Hmm? You could also have the life cycle of certain animals. Like for example, okay, this is there is this question over here. It is a life cycle of a frog. So this is also a natural process. But the reason why I have put this over here is to indicate that this is a cyclical process. Okay, what is a cyclical process? It works like a cycle. Okay, it's nothing, it doesn't stop. It just continues to happen in nature. Like for example, over here, this is showing the cycle of how it starts with the eggs. Okay, it's actually, you can just pick up a particular starting point which sounds logical. Okay, an adult frog gives lays eggs, and then that whole process continues, and till that those eggs become a full grown adult frog, and then the process continues, because again an adult frog will lay eggs and the whole cycle continues. So it continues to happen in the form of a cycle. We saw the water cycle earlier. The name itself indicates that it is a cycle. Okay, it doesn't start at one point and end at another point. It just continues in the form of a circle, and hence it is known as a cyclical process. It goes back to the beginning and repeats all over again. So that is what a cyclical process is. Okay. You could also the process wherein a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. It's a cyclical process, and it happens in nature. So it is cyclical and natural, right? Then we have linear processes. What are linear processes? Linear processes, they start at one point and they finish at another point. Okay, so linear is actually like this. Okay, this is a line. So you get the word linear from the word line. So it starts at one point and it ends at the other point. So hence it's called a linear process. So for example, it will start at a point where you have the raw material. So in cement production, for example, you start with raw material like limestone and clay. And how does this process end? This process ends in the manufacture of cement. So that is why it is known as a linear process. Okay, concrete production is also a linear process. So this is what a linear process is. It normally it could be a manufacturing process where you use a raw material. It comes in at one end, it starts with the raw material and it ends with the finished goods. So that is a linear process. So this example given here is that of cement or concrete manufacturing. Okay, so these are four types of questions. Of course, now this one, for example, it is a man-made process and it is linear. Okay, the life cycle of a frog, it is a natural process and it is cyclical, right? Any questions about the type of process diagrams? Anyone? Okay. Now, our question today, we are going to focus on one specific question type. Okay. So we are going to look at a specific question here, and we are going to see how you can write a good report based on this question. Okay. Now, what does this question say? The question says, the process below shows how drinking water is made using solar power. Okay, so you can see that there is the sun over here and you use solar energy from the sun using solar panels to produce energy, electricity. Okay, and that electricity results, there is a process that is followed and it ultimately results in the production or it results, the end result or the end product is drinkable water. Okay, so how solar energy or solar power is used to make drinking water. Okay, now what is the question saying? It says, write a report for a university lecturer describing the information given below. So whatever you see in this diagram, okay, you need to do an information transfer task. So whatever you see in the form of a diagram, you need to convert it into the form of a text. So this diagram has to be explained in using language. Okay, that's what you are actually doing when you are doing a task one question. The diagrammatic representation of information is converted into language, right? Now, your question will normally say that you need to write at least 150 words. Remember that you cannot use bullet points or note in the form of a note. Your report cannot be in the form of a note. It has to be paragraphed, okay, full sentences and organized into paragraphs. This is very important. Please don't go and write a report in the form of bullet points, okay? You will not get a good band score at all if you do that, right? Right. So what we are going to do now is we are just going to take a look at this diagram and we are going to study it a little more in detail, okay? Can anyone tell me, describe the first part of this process over here? You don't need to use technical language. You can explain it in your own words. So actually this electricity is used to, the electricity that is generated from solar energy, it is used to operate the pump. Okay, the pump gets operated and it pumps energy, water from under the ground. Okay, and that water is pumped and it goes up and passes through a water filter. Once it passes through the filter, it is purified and it becomes fit for drinking. Okay, so it's collected in a tank, and as and when it is required, it is collected in movable containers. So these movable containers go to the end user, the customers or the consumers of the water. Okay, so this was a very simple, it's not a very complicated diagram. Okay, what you really need to do is ensure that you just study it carefully before you start writing. Okay, don't be in a hurry to start writing your report, or for that matter, even your essay. Okay, let me just tell you, explain this to you. There is something which we call the power method. Okay, power is an acronym where P and O stand for planning and organizing, W is writing, E is editing, and R is revising. So you have 20 minutes. Take a couple of minutes, maybe 3 to 4 minutes, to study your diagram, understand it, and then, you know, start writing. You can take around 12 minutes to write the report, and you should leave around 2 to 3 minutes at the end to check and make corrections. Those corrections, if you don't make them, you could lose out. You could lose out maybe half a band score if the number of mistakes are not too many. If you have made quite a few number of mistakes, then you might lose out on even a 1 band score. Okay, so this is how you should utilize your time. So don't just get into writing. Study your diagram, understand the diagram, and then start writing. Okay, now we are going to look at how we are going to write this, the process diagram report, paragraph by paragraph. Okay, so this is what a overall structure of a report looks like. This is a structure which is common for all types of inputs, whether it's a process diagram, whether it's a graph, whether it's a map. Okay, but of course content will vary depending upon the specific question type. So 4 paragraphs are actually enough. Just in case you need a fifth, you might need a 5th paragraph if you think that there is more information to write about. Okay, now the question which we just saw is a very small process. There's not much to it, so you should be able to manage writing it in 4 paragraphs. Okay, so what is it that you write in the first paragraph? In the first paragraph, we paraphrase the question. So basically rewrite the question using different language without changing the meaning of the sentence. You can start this paragraph with very specific language. Now, in this case, it's a process diagram, right? So we can say that the diagram illustrates, demonstrates, shows, depicts. These are words which you can use, phrases rather, which you can use to start the first paragraph. In case it is data related, in our case, it is not data related because we are doing a process. Okay. In case it is data related, we can include the values. If the source of information, you know, that diagram, wherever that information is sourced from, if that is given in your diagram, you can include that information as well in the first paragraph. Okay. Now, coming to the second paragraph is an overview. An overview, having an overview in your report is extremely important. If you don't write an overview, you will not get more than a 5-band score. Okay, so ensure that you write a good overview, right? A 5-band score for task achievement. Okay, so writing an overview is important. Now, what do you write in an overview? You can give a general description of the process. Okay, just an overview of the process. And you can include the important features. What we are going to do now is we are going to take each paragraph at a time and break down your report paragraph wise. So when we come to the overview, you will see how you can write a good overview for a process diagram. Okay. Then in para 3 and 4, of course, you're going to write about the main features. Now in a process diagram, what is that? You're going to actually describe the process end to end. Okay, so in a linear process, you'll start right at the beginning where probably you start with the raw material and you end with the finished product. You explain that entire process in 2 paragraphs, para 3 and 4. If it's a cyclical process, you can start at a logical point. As I said, it is cyclical. It keeps on moving in a cycle. But try to start at a particular point which seems logical to start. Okay, like for example, when I was showing you the diagram about the life cycle of a frog, starting with the adult frog seems logical. Okay, the frog lays the eggs and then so on and so forth. Okay, so this is how you structure a good report. We are now going to break this down paragraph wise and see how you can write the report for this particular diagram. Okay, wherein you are converting groundwater into drinking water using solar energy. Okay, now what did the instructions? We just saw the structure of the report, and what did the instructions say? The first paragraph, you have to paraphrase the question and add, this is the language that you can use, include the source of information. Now, of course, in this question, in this diagram, there is no source of information seen. Okay, so let's see. This was our question. The question was, the process below shows, I'm sorry, this word shouldn't be here. Yeah. The process below shows how drinking water is made using solar power. Okay, this is your question, which has to be paraphrased. Now let's see how this has been rewritten using different language without changing the meaning. Okay, the given process diagram demonstrates the end-to-end procedure, end-to-end. So starting from the beginning and ending with the finished product. Okay, so end-to-end procedure of converting groundwater. Okay, the water which we get from under the ground is known as groundwater. Okay, into water that is fit for drinking. So instead of saying drinking water, we have written that it is fit for drinking. And instead of saying solar power, we have said using energy from the sun. Okay, so this is how you can paraphrase the question, right? Any questions about the first paragraph? So guys, if you see, you might not be able to find synonyms for every single word. Okay, so in that case, you can also change the form of the word. Okay, now drinking water, instead of just saying drinking water, what have I said? Fit for drinking. Okay, not much of a change. The word drinking has been used as it is, but drinking water has been rephrased as fit for drinking. Okay, so even such minor changes will amount to paraphrasing. Okay, so try to do the best that you can in when it comes to paraphrasing, because it's the first paragraph and the first paragraph is what your examiner is going to read. So making a good job, doing a good job of it would be desirable. Okay, you'll get a better band score if you write a good paraphrase. Now coming to the second paragraph, which I said is the overview. In the overview, you can give a general description of the process. You can include the important features. Okay, now how do you do that? Okay, what I have done here is I have included the main processes. Okay, I have identified electricity generation, pumping of water, and filtration of water as the three main processes which result in production of drinking or drinkable water. Okay, so let's see how it has been phrased. Overall, it is seen that solar power can be effectively utilized to convert polluted and contaminated groundwater into potable water. Now, potable water, drinking water is also referred to as potable water. Okay, so contaminated groundwater into potable water, which is safe for human consumption, primarily drinking. The process consists of three main stages: electricity generation, water pumping, and filtration. So I have just given a general overview of the entire process. I'm saying that it is, you know, how it is possible to use solar energy effectively to convert the contaminated or the impure groundwater into potable water. Another synonym that I have used. And I have mentioned the important processes. So I might say that the process consists of three main stages, which are, and I have named those stages. Okay, a very simple overview, but this is what you are expected to actually write. Okay, and instead of saying overall, there are alternative phrases which you can use, which are it is clear. So it is clear that solar power can be effectively utilized, or it is evident, it is apparent from the diagram that solar power can be effectively utilized, and so on. Right? So this is how you write your second paragraph. Any questions about the overview? Okay, great. Now we move on and we are going to understand how we are going to. Now, what do we do in para 3 and 4? It's very simple. In para 3 and 4, it's very simple. You're going to explain the process, the entire process, end to end, completely in detail. Okay. Select and write the main features in detail. Add a fifth paragraph only if there is more data. This is a very short and sweet process. So you don't need a fifth paragraph. You can easily write it in just 2 paragraphs. Okay. Now, I'm going to read this out and I'm going to explain it vis-a-vis the diagram. Firstly, okay, linking words. Firstly, when the sun shines onto the solar panels. So here you can see the sun shining and this is your solar panel. Okay. Its energy is absorbed by the panel cells. You can see that there are cells on this panel. So the energy of the sun is absorbed by the panel cells and converted into electricity. Now this electricity passes through a solar controller and is utilized to operate a pump. So the energy, the electricity passes through the solar controller and you can see that it is going towards this pump. So it is used to operate the pump. Then what happens? The pump pulls up the water from the ground, which subsequently, another linking word, which subsequently passes through a water filter. So the water is pulled up by this pump and it passes through a water filter to remove all the impurities and contaminants from it. As a result, again, a linking word. As a result, the water which comes out of the filter is pure drinking water, which is collected in a huge tank. So this is a tank. The drinking water is collected in a huge tank, which is placed on a wooden platform. Okay. Next, finally, so the last process, the last part of the process. So finally, a tap in the lower half of the tank is used. So you can see this tap here is used to fill up movable containers. So here it is labeled as a movable container. So I have used the same word. Can you use any other word for movable container? Another word for movable? Guys, think about it. Okay. Finally, a tap in the, someone has said something. Transferable, not really. You could actually use, I was thinking of portable, Portable. Okay, something which can be moved. Okay, so is used to fill up movable containers with drinking water for supply to the end users. Okay, it's actually a very simple diagram. Okay, the only thing is that you will, although it is simple, you need to use good language, you need to use correct grammar, you need to use the linking words. You also need to ensure that you use complex sentences. All these aspects need to be considered when you are writing your report. Okay, now over here, if you see this this sentence here, the pump pulls up the water from the ground. This becomes a complex sentence, which subsequently passes through a water filter to remove all the impurities and contaminants from it. Okay, this is one complex sentence. There is another complex sentence over here. As a result, the water which comes out of the filter is pure drinking water, which is collected in a huge tank. Okay, this is also a complex sentence. So try and use complex sentences. Okay. Now, guys, just look at this these 2 paragraphs and tell me that have we used the active voice here, the passive voice here, or is it a mix of both? Are you all familiar with the active and the passive voice? Yes? Yes or no? Okay. Yeah. Vijayashri, were you saying something?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So can you just give me an example or tell me how what is a active voice and what is a passive voice? Okay, let me explain it to you. So in a normal sentence, you have a subject plus a verb plus an object. Okay. Normally, it is the subject which is the doer of the action of the verb. Okay. So for example, giving you a very simple example, mom cooks dinner. Okay. Here, mom is the subject and mom is doing the action of cooking. So we are giving priority to the subject or the doer of the action. And this is known as the active voice. Whereas in the passive voice, importance is given to the receiver of the action, which is dinner, the object. Okay. Dinner is cooked by mom. This is the passive voice. Now, you will notice that in a process diagram, we tend to use the passive voice more than the active voice. Okay. So, if you all are not familiar with the passive voice, you should try to get a little familiar with the passive voice. Okay. Because if it's a process diagram, you might need to use the passive voice more. Okay. Let me give you an example. The pump pulls up the water from the ground. Okay. Now, actually, here, the water is pulled up from the ground is the active voice. The water is pulled up is the active voice. But what have we written? We have written that the pump pulls up the water. Okay, so passive voice. So it is saying the energy is absorbed by the panel cells. So actually the active voice is the panel cells absorb the energy. But here we have used the passive voice. Okay, good. So this is how we tend to use more of the passive voice when we are doing um, process diagram reports. Okay, so putting together all these 4 paragraphs, you have a report. This report has 180 words. The word count is 180. Okay, I'm just going to read it end to end. Pay careful attention. The given process diagram demonstrates the end-to-end procedure of converting groundwater into water that is fit for drinking using energy from the sun. Overall, it is seen that solar power can be effectively utilized to convert polluted and contaminated groundwater into potable water, which is safe for human consumption, primarily drinking. The process consists of 3 main stages: electricity generation, water pumping, and filtration. So this was your overview. Now we have the third and fourth paragraph. Firstly, when the sun shines onto the solar panels, its energy is absorbed by the panel cells and converted into electricity, which then passes through a solar controller and is utilized to operate a pump. The pump pulls up the water from the ground, which subsequently passes through a water filter to remove all the impurities and contaminants from it. As a result, the water which comes out of the filter is pure drinking water, which is collected in a huge tank placed on a wooden platform. Finally, a tap in the lower half of the tank is used to fill up movable containers with drinking water for supply to the end users. Okay, so this is what a report would look like when it comes to a process diagram. Now, some very general pointers when it comes to process diagrams. So it is a less common question type, no doubt, but you should be prepared. Okay, it's not that it is never asked. It is asked. It was asked. This particular question was asked sometime in December. Okay, I think in the first week of December. So don't assume that it's less common, so it's okay if I don't prepare for it. It's less likely to come. If it comes, then you should be prepared. Okay. Before you start writing, you should study the diagram carefully and understand it and then start writing. Those a few minutes, maybe 1, 2, 3 minutes that you take to study the diagram will help you to write faster. Okay. Next, writing an overview. I have already mentioned this. I'm repeating this because it is important if you want to get a band score of 6 or more. Okay. Use linking words like firstly, secondly, thirdly. It's a process. Okay. So one step follows another step. So these are very simple linking words that you can use in process diagrams. Firstly, something happens. Next, something happens. Subsequently, the next process happens. Then, all these are words which indicate, progression from one step to one part of the process to another part. So these are simple but effective linking words that you can use in a process diagram. And finally, as I said, that the passive voice is normally used in process diagrams more than you would use it otherwise. So try and get familiar with the passive voice. Okay. That's about it from my end on, how you can write a good report when it comes to a process diagram.